A few days ago, I briefly analyzed the potential of Lyney's kit. Today, it's time for a more in-depth look at what works best for his builds. The calculations are done with Kazuha and Bennett buffs in mind, and a Lyney rotation that includes 3 charge attacks, 1 elemental burst and 1 elemental skill, although the order of these actions might vary depending on the weapon or artifact analyzed. Starting from his possible weapons, of course his best option is his signature weapon, which I won't show visually for obvious reasons. Long story short, it's very similar to Thundering Pulse. It's a critical damage main stat weapon with an attack percent related passive. The only difference is that instead of normal attack damage buffs, the weapon gives even more attack percent based on how many teammates of the same type are on the team. This suits Lyney's archetype well, since his passive grants him more damage buffs the more pyro allies are on his team. At maximum, the passive will grant him a total of 52% attack, which is quite massive. However, not all teams I've analyzed so far include 3 pyro teammates, as some of his defensive variants include both Zhongli and Kazuha. In this scenario, the signature still does very well, but it doesn't outright beat other great options like Aqua Simulacra, Thundering Pulse and Skyward Harp. In general, all the weapons that provide some critical damage work well on him, since all of his other stats are very high by default, by virtue of having a critical rate ascension stat and a main set that provides him a lot of additional crit rate, as well as high damage buffs from his passive and Kazuha, and obviously high attack since he has Bennett on team and he benefits from Pyro Resonance as well. Polar Star hangs in there too, but to build up its passive properly you will need to use a normal attack at the start of the rotation, which isn't a big deal at all. Lower in the list, some 5-star weapons that have less favorable characteristics. Hunter's Path has a very good main stat, but its passive isn't that good for Lyney. Amos might look fitting at a glance, since Lyney is a charge attack based character, but the issue is that the damage Lyney deals through his charge shots alone is about 20% of his total rotation damage, so that limits its impact by a lot. The great free-to-play weapon prototype bow is better than both of these 5-star weapons, granted you can headshot an opponent, although this is not always possible. Lower in the list, predictably all the other 4-star weapons, in particular the new Battle Pass weapon and the new craftable weapon. Technically, at Refinement 5, the new Battle Pass weapon might be good enough to be a tier above, but since that won't be possible until patch 4.4 at the very least, it wouldn't be fair to rank it higher as of right now. The craftable weapon is a bit weird, because it grants him damage buffs when he gets healed. The issue here is that Bennett won't heal Lyney until he goes below 70% HP because of how his burst works, which outside of opponents' attacks, it won't happen until Lyney uses 2 of his charge attacks, since each of them will make him lose 20% HP. Still a pretty decent weapon, just keep that limitation in mind. For artifacts, once again, the thing that's coming out for him specifically is what works best. The new set gives him a charge attack damage buff with a 2-piece effect, and 11% crit rate each time he loses HP, up to 3 times for 5 seconds. Even ignoring opponents' attacks in terms of how this set can build up stacks, this set performs really nicely through Lyney's HP sacrifice mechanics alone. There is just some variance depending on whether you start this rotation with burst or not, since in the second case, the burst will get the full 33% crit rate buff, while in the first case it won't get it at all. The reason you might want to start the rotation with burst is that it will set up a taunt on field right away, which might make the execution of the rest of Lyney's attacks considerably easier. In this other scenario, the set gets much closer to Lava Walker, and even other options like 2-piece sets combinations become competitive. Just keep in mind that with artifacts, substats make a big difference, and in general, 5 crit substats are enough to eliminate a 10% gap between 2 artifact combinations, so your own specific scenario might be wildly different to what's in this graph. I'm done for today. The next Lyney video will be about these best teams, optimal rotations and stat distribution, but not before I cover some of the other stuff that came out with the new update. See you next time!